Welcome back to episode number 46 of the Phillies Fan Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Harper, joined today by Ian Kopey. How you doing today, Ian?
Doing great. Feels good to be back.
Yeah, it's been a while. The Phillies, the deadline just passed, a really interesting deadline on all fronts. I know I posted on Monday about the deadline. I want to get your thoughts before we continue about, the Phillies deadline.
I think it's a deadline for the Phillies. Told me that after the events that occurred in the past weeks, okay, they came away with a new infielder who hits over 300, another reliever with an ERA of under two, and then another reliever who's been having a solid year, and we have 5 more years of control for. Was said, been a great deadline. But then now, once you add the context, okay, it costed you Ramon Marquez, who was one of the more favorable prospects that we did not want to give up. Along, and then other guys like Alec Alec Bohm are still here, which people think he could go, but he's a much harder guy to move. Along with now, yeah, still have Dante Nori and Arun Escobar are still here. I don't not sure how those guys could have been traded. Along with the context, okay, you see what happened for to get Taylor Ward and all the other big names that were moved around in baseball today. There were some head scratchers, and it was like, why couldn't the Phillies do that? This team definitely got better at the deadline, but there was so much that I believe was left on the table.
See, that's where I would disagree about saying that the Phillies got better. I can't see this team as a better team than what it was when we all woke up on Monday morning. I mean, you honestly didn't even really improve at a position at all. I mean, the only one you could argue is that you improved in right field. Now moving Bryce Harper, but now you have a guy with a -1 WAR at first base, and now you're putting Bryce Stott at a position he hasn't played since 2022. He played for like 2 games in the major leagues. You're putting Bryce Harper back in right field, where he played about 5 games in 2022, got injured, missed majority of the 2022 season, right? And he hasn't played regularly in right field since 2021, 5 years ago. And now you're putting Luis Arias, who hasn't been a good defender in his career, as second base, even though Bryce Stott is a Gold Glove candidate almost every single year. So that's where you look at it's like, did the Phillies really get better? I mean, I look at the prospect wise. I think, Ramon Marquez was a really good prospect. You didn't really want to move him, but at the same time, the Phillies have not really traded a prospect who's hurt them in the past, right? The Phillies haven't given up anybody. The only person I wrote down a list of all of them over the last 5 years. The only person who you could say who the Phillies are like, it would have been nice to have him is Mickey Modiak. And he only got good when he went to Colorado. So it's a really tough it was a really tough deadline for Dave Dombrowski. Uh, if you had to give Dombrowski a grade, what grade would you give him?
As of right now, I want to give him something bad, but what I'm thinking so far is in the C plus range. To get to a point about did the team get better? I mean, you have to look at what it was in the previous context of the past few weeks and what the holes have been. Whereas the offense has been too many strikeouts, not enough good balls put in play. I think Luis Ariz is in a sense solves that problem, and he's been better defensively this season at second base. I've judged him a lot in the past, being like, okay, he's only a slap hitter, and it doesn't isn't a good base runner, isn't a good defender. Now he's put together some solid defense and leads the league in batting. I mean, usually batting average can be a misleading stat, but when you lead the league in it, you're doing something right. And
Yeah,
I think also the bullpen with the addition of Brooks Raley and Caleb Killian, they're two valuable pieces that can help you with in the sense of absence of Brad Keller. And now you have another lefty to go with Tim Mesa. I think it would be very, very clutch if Tim Mesa could be all of a sudden now your sixth inning lefty guy, or that it isn't all of a sudden, no, this is the leverage, our top three leverage guy we have to use in those seventh and eighth innings. It shifts people back now and sets your bullpen up better for the bridge to Duran.
so yeah, when you talk about Killian, on the surface his stats are not great. The season a 4.26 ERA in 45 games. but the under the hood stats look good. You look at his baseball savant page, a lot of red, and he's also the pre-arbitration, but it just doesn't feel like the guy you could have gotten to replace a guy like Brad Keller, who's supposed to be your eighth inning guy. That's where I'm a little pessimistic about everything, because then you make that Killian trade early in the day. I was thinking, I was under the belief in that next 8 hours that we could have seen a guy like Orion Kerrigan on the move. We could have seen an Alec Boehm on the move to get another setup guy, to get a guy who in the postseason could end up moving to the bullpen. For example, like a George Kirby from Seattle. That's what my impression was going into the rest of the day after the trade with the Giants. I just think the Phillies missed out on bigger and better opportunities at this deadline, and it's something that they've done consistently over the last 5 years.
Definitely. I was waiting for a fifth starter to come throughout the day. And I've been really preaching before, like fifth starter should be the top option because not only does it help you out the rest of the way the regular season, that's an addition, a solid addition to the bullpen. You look at the Dodgers and the Blue Jays last year, they added a fifth starter to the bullpen and it worked out great. I like hands down what Chris Bassett did for the Blue Jays last year in the World Series. The former starter and got that you gave you that one solid inning when you needed it. And I think and this is something the Phillies try to do with their bullpen last October, and unfortunately it failed. You didn't use Walker Buehler, and they used Taiwan Walker once in the Dodgers series. So, but now I do kind of worry. Is the pressure now going to be like fifth starter spots? Is it, they have that much confidence in Andrew Painter where at this point, I would assume like now you'd have to sort of think of a spot on the postseason roster if they make it there. First off, only what was it 2 games now, I believe, over uh,
Got
in the wild card
half
currently.
like half a game right now over the last after over the last spot right now, and Arizona's playing as we're recording, so and they're winning, so that could easily be the Phillies back in that final spot because they lost the series already this season to Arizona. But you mentioned the point about Pater in the fifth starter spot. With Andrew Pater, really good start in Baltimore, 6 innings, 2 runs. The bullpen couldn't hold it, but the Phillies haven't won a game started by the fifth starter since May 18th. That's almost 3 months. We're getting really close to 3 months at this point that the Phillies have not had a win in a game the fifth starter pitched, which just can't happen for a team that's trying to make a run to the playoffs. I do think there was pitching available that the Phillies could have gotten that they just weren't being honestly creative enough. You see a guy like Chris Bubich going to the Dodgers. They only had to trade one prospect to get him. That's someone who you could have gotten. Casey Mize is a name that the Phillies were in talks with a lot. That just didn't look realistic when you look at what the Padres gave up to get him for a rental. I just don't think that would have been the right move. Same thing with Clay Holmes. Honestly, same thing with Scooble because the Tigers would have wanted a lot more from the Phillies than they did the Dodgers. So it just comes down to the point where the Phillies just didn't get creative because there were starters to be had, but the Phillies didn't make moves to get said starters. That's going to hurt them at the end of the day. Pater was good in that start, but can you rely on him to be great every 5 days? Who's going to be starting that fourth game of the postseason? Realistically, it could be against the Dodgers. Who's starting that game? Aaron Nola? You're going to put Aaron Nola out there against, the best lineup in baseball? That is just a recipe for disaster. I think that's where the Phillies didn't capitalize is their lineup when it comes to their right-handed hitter and the fifth pitcher at this deadline.
Definitely, I do have to agree. You didn't get creative, and there's a lot of times. I mean, I've been a believer and a defender in Dave Dombrowski in the past because I believe a lot of his moves are overlooked. But yeah, there's a lot of times I'm like, I really wish they could have gotten a little more creative there. What I would say about that fourth game in the postseason, and and Aaron Nola starting that game does not have to be a start. You saw what he did in Game 3 last year, the first game out in LA. He started just 2 innings, then they handed the ball to Ranger Suarez. I think if you could get Aaron Nola in a playoff series, in that game, it was the best of Aaron Nola I had seen all season. It felt like every pitch he threw in his arsenal was on point to what it was supposed to be when watching that game. So now what I do believe that if you were to give Aaron Nola, he is not the guy you're going to let them go, oh, try to get 6 innings out of him. I say, all right, first and a half time through the order, give me 12 outs. And then, all right, hand the ball to an Andrew Painter. Andrew, give me 6 outs right here. It depends on probably a Caleb Cotham thing to worry about there, and Don Mattingly, how you get creative there. I'll say is Andrew Painter ready. Obviously, well, I think that game on it was Friday, right, where he started. I thought that was seeing him go out there was the pretty much the happiest the Phillies have all. It made me happy since the All Star break. I mean, it had been a rough few weeks going to that Baltimore series, and then obviously Painter gives up the home run in the first inning to Pete Alonso. Oh my God, darn it, he's too he's not ready yet. But then he comes in there and then really just shoves the rest of the 6 innings. And I'm watching his pitches. I'm like, this is the fastball that we've been missing this whole time. And the sweeper and the slider, mixing those so properly. Then mixing in that splitter too. I love it when I was watching. I was like, that's the Andrew Painter we've been waiting to see for a long time. The fastball command could have been a little better, but I tell you, it was so good for the adversity he's had to face. Because yes, being a first overall pick and a guy coming through high school, everything's works out for you. But now you're in the big leagues now. It's 2026. Yeah, you're a rookie, but this dude, he faced the adversity and he came out to show that day, and I was so happy to see it.
I want to go back to your point about Aaron Nola and how last year the Phillies used him in Game 3. The great thing about last year was that you had a guy of Ranger Suarez who could go 6 innings, who could be the postseason guy. You don't have that this year. You don't have that luxury necessarily. I don't know when you sit down and look at it right now. I personally can't say I would trust Andrew Painter to go out in any postseason game in any scenario unless it's like 7-0, 8-0. That's not a shot at Andrew Painter. That is just what the case is right now. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable, especially against a team like the Dodgers, putting out Andrew Painter. He's gonna have to face Shohei Ohtani or Freddie Freeman or anybody on the Dodgers lineup. I just don't think that's the safest point. So now you're in a position where you don't have a fifth starter unless you're going to bring back Alan Rangel. And that didn't really even work out at the major league level. He's been great on the minor league level, but the major league level has not worked out at all. You bring back Brian Keller. He was good against the Yankees, but again, I don't know if you're going to have Brian Keller pitching postseason innings, right? You don't want that. The most ideal situation for the Phillies would be Aaron Nola turning back the clock to go back to, 2018 to 2022 Aaron Nola. I mean, you get that going into the postseason. He could give you six in that fourth game. But I just don't think that's realistic. So you just got to figure out what you do in that fourth game, or whether it would be game one or game two or game four of that series. I think that's where the Phillies kind of shot themselves in the foot at this year's deadline. But he talks about Painter. And I want to get to him when it comes to the deadline. There were talks about Andrew Painter being moved at this year's deadline if the Phillies were able to make a big splash. Do you think the Phillies should have moved Painter to get a like starting pitcher like a Jose Soriano or someone like that at this year's deadline?
I believe again when you have a big prospect like that who has shown you value and he's still in his development process, a place like that, it's got to be someone that has the club control. I believe how many years of club control did Jose Soriano have?
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's under contract for 27 and 28.
Only 7 and 20. I mean, it gives you 2 seasons. I would have preferred if you dealt Andrew Painter. It's like you're dealing a future piece for somebody else who could help your future. So I think if it was someone more like okay, it gives you 4 or 5 years, maybe team control. I think maybe I mean obviously we have Joe Duran, but I think maybe you think Mason Miller because he's under contract for a while. Again, I really have to think amongst the star players how many more years value. This is why I love the Caleb Killian uh, acquisition because to me it reminds me so much of Jonathan Bolin. You flipped Matt Strom, an aging Matt Strom, for a development valuable piece, and oh my, I can't wait to watch this guy out of the bullpen for the next 4 to 5 years. But I would say to your point, Andrew Painter, from even though yes, it has been a rough season, but the confidence is still there. I really do believe he would have already been traded if there was a lack of confidence in the Philly staff that they could revive him. Because I think that is also an important factor when trading guys. Like you, it's how much do you believe in yourselves? Like, do we have what it takes to develop this guy? And if there's no connection there, then obviously you're favoring to let him go there. So I think for Andrew Painter, I'm not upset that he is still here. I think obviously he's your best fit start at the moment, and And as you said, though, like starting playoff games, like yeah, he's a rookie starting a playoff game. Getting playoff innings. It's rough. You only want in low leverage. And I feel even worse about Alan Monhell out here. I mean, Alan Monhell's put up some good innings for us, but it's like to have him in the playoffs, he's barely a major league arm. So when it comes to Andrew Painter, he at least showed that he has major league stuff in the game against Baltimore. I mean, obviously, yes, facing the Orioles, it wasn't like facing the Dodgers, but when he was out there having confidence in his stuff, I was looking at especially that sweeper and that cutter and that slider. I'm like, that could work against a team like the Dodgers if he has it on point, which there's no promises there, but I see the potential there. And unfortunately, that's what playoff baseball is about, is unlocking your potential and executing. You don't, and so and that goes for the case for the rest of our pitchers. But I think if the Phillies could be that confident in Andrew Painter to give you playoff innings where like, hey, his stuff could work against the Dodgers, it'd be a gamble. But I think it's unfortunately it's the position you put yourself in to pressure the rookie. And yeah, I really would have really loved if we got a fifth starter today where okay, maybe you have Andrew Painter on the roster as like the sixth man, and it'd be an extended guy if need be. And like, as you said, yeah, just lower leverage. There is no such thing as low leverage in the playoff, but those eat some innings parts of those games. So yeah,
Yeah, and the Phillies did trade actually two of those guys who were more their lower leverage guys. Nolan Hoffman was DFA'd today as a part of the trade for Brooks Raley. He was traded to Kansas City for Manuel Colon. And then the other trade, which is a little bigger, was Seth Johnson. The Phillies acquired him back in 2024 in the Gregory Soto trade. They have sent Seth Johnson to the Athletics for Kobe Thomas, which is a really interesting move. Thomas ended last season as the A's third ranked prospect, right-handed bat, right-handed outfielder. But from what it sounds like and what the reports came out during Dave Dombrowski's press conference after the deadline, that the Phillies ran out of time to acquire another starter and reliever. What do you think about the Phillies, quote unquote, running out of time at this year's trade deadline?
it's it's an ugly sentence to hear from your PBO or GM coming out of the deadline, and you wonder it could have been maybe oh yeah when it gets like yeah 15 minutes before could there have been like if there's any fifth starters rental that the team's like hey we'll take anything. Um, I again my really only question is all right Dave what you're saying this in the press conference I just want to know what honestly what happened in that office room what calls were being made and how did they go who could you not get anybody on the line was obviously because yeah Casey Mize went last minute. There must be a few other names I'm forgetting. Who I remember. Yeah, there was some as a Jeff Passan quoted. Oh, so we have stoppage time here, and yeah, there were some deals that did go down in there. The running out of time thing that was rough, and I don't have many other words to describe it because it is pretty annoying to hear that. Yeah, you ran out of time. So when because obviously I do want to say you had the whole day, but you just is that I really feel like that means that you weren't following properly with the market and like
Yeah,
being ready. Like you weren't planning properly. Like okay, we know that this is going to be here when 5:30 rolls around after X amount of players have gone.
I think part of it is also when you look at the teams around the Phillies, what they did at this year's deadline. I mean, the Dodgers obviously had the big one, Gideon Schoolwell, but they also got Chris Bubich. They're going to get Blake Snell back. They're going to get Tyler Glasnow back. So they really got four starting pitchers at this year's deadline. When you look at how Aaron Boone would put it, you also have, the Cubs. They go get Kevin Gausman, who is one of the best starters available. You go get Clay Holmes, who's one of the best starters available. Two people who the Phillies were mentioned on. Did it didn't even seem like it came down to the Phillies being involved in those trade talks when it came down to the nitty-gritty. You have a guy like you have Milwaukee, they made a couple moves today getting Dustin May, who could have been a name. Even it wouldn't have been an impact move, but it still would have been better than what we have right now. Then you look at a team like even the Padres, what they did today, going out and getting Casey Mize and Robbie Ray, both guys who the Phillies again were linked to. So it just feels like the Phillies, like I said earlier, they weren't getting creative. They weren't pursuing enough. Even like a Foster Griffin going to Cleveland, that was an option for the Phillies. just didn't
Yeah.
didn't work out. But I just think, but you look at all the issues, there was a lot of issues on the table. And I want to read out some stats here. This is pre-deadline, pre-moves that were made on Monday. Uh, Look at two lineups here. One of them is the Phillies. I'm not going to tell you which one is which. One of them is the Phillies, and one of them is the Colorado Rockies. If I told you that when you compare both lineups by OPS, which lineup do you think would have better OPSs across the board?
Well, it sounds you would hope it's the $300 million if I'm kept that money that number right. The Phillies, but I think that the team that plays at pitching friendly course field, may have something better.
Well, the Rockies have 67 losses this season. Phillies have 60 wins. The Rockies shortstop, which is Willie Castro, their third baseman, uh, your catcher, obviously Hunter Goodman, their left fielder, Jake McCarthy, their center fielder now, Cole Carrick, all have better OPSs when you compare them to the counterpart on the Phillies. You also have DH is very close. Mickey Moniak having a great season just got extended. First base is very close. And it just shows you the issue with the Phillies, the Phillies lineup right now. Your third baseman, Alec Bohm, sitting has an OPS of 647. JT Realmuto, the catcher, has an OPS of 668. Justin Crawford has an OPS of 651. And Mundo Sosa, who's been an incredible disappointment this season for the Phillies, has an OPS of 579. He's someone I thought who could have been traded today, considering he's a free agent at the end of the season. But no one probably wants him because of how bad he's been this season. Your backup catchers have an OPS. One has an OPS of 312. It's Rafael Marchand. The other one has an OPS of 390, which is Garrett Stubbs. You have Gabriel Rakotas, who was their everyday right fielder until they moved Bryce Harper back out there, has a 488 OPS. And then the right-handed bat that the Phillies said they settled on was Brian De La Cruz, who they re-signed to a major league deal, who has been good. He has a 1.235 OPS right now. But Brian De La Cruz isn't winning a team a World Series championship at the end of the day. When you have guys like Taylor Ward on the board, there was a lot of guys available today who got moved today who the Phillies could have definitely gotten. Phillies have the third worst on base percentage in Major League Baseball, and they go get a guy who never walks, in Luis Arias. He doesn't strike out, but he also never walks. They have the eighth worst OPS in baseball, and they have the worst average in baseball. And the Phillies' biggest move today was to get Luis Arias. That's where I feel like they failed at this year's deadline. I mean, it's just it's a bad energy around the team, especially after what happened over the last week and a half. It just feels like there could have been more done.
Yeah, that really results back to what I had said in the beginning. And obviously, I mean, the energy going into this deadline is with all the flaws you see on this team, what will be? Like, is it even possible to have a deadline that's enough? And obviously, when you look at the trades happened today, maybe it even was. I think, and obviously, all the list of stats you go to show is like, what do the Colorado Rockies not have with all that OPS? The starting staff, like we do, because oh, geez, isn't it nice that we can get away with all these one-run wins with Joe Underon, followed by then having almost three Cy Young candidates um, who keep carrying us. And I think that's probably the biggest thing to give Dave credit for is that wow, he put together at least a starting staff that could, because where would we be without them? That's the thing we've been saying since the beginning of 2025, really. And you rely so much on your Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper bats to do big things. Obviously, you made the point. Yeah, I mean Brian De La Cruz is a guy like you know what? I'll take any bit of production we can get out of him because at this point he's barely a major league player. But whatever he gives us on the field, I don't think it's going to last like it was like a Harrison Bader last year who just happened to give us the best 2 months of his career when he came here. So yeah, the OPS, yeah, I believe they did come up short on the bat side. And yes, I think that Taylor Ward trade, it's going to haunt us for a while. And I think the point to also make is the Phillies did all this to move Alec to all right, get Luis Ariza, move Alec Bohm to first base, put Bryce Harper in the outfield. It kind of annoys me when Pete Alonso was a free agent. The Phillies hesitated to offer him a contract because they didn't want to move Bryce Harper from first base. So instead of signing Pete Alonso back then to keep Bryce Harper at first, now they're keeping Alec Bohm at first base, and that's really infuriating. Obviously, there was maybe hopes today that Alec Bohm, because that one of my least favorite players on the team, like oh maybe he could be maybe moved today just because it's like it's not working. It really isn't. The defense isn't even there. He's one of the slower players in baseball, and he's for his size he barely slugs. And I mean, it really annoyed me today that Dave Dombrowski's coming. Oh, he has 60 RBIs. The RBI stat is important, but it's 2026. We've moved on to bigger and better ways to measure player success. Having him at first base, I mean, all I can say now is Alec Bohm, please give us the best, the best you can, really.
Because
It almost kind of scares me. It's like, are the Phillies going to be stuck in a position where they have to give him another contract this offseason?
that's what it's shaping up to be right now, in my eyes, unless you're gonna move Bryce's Stott to third base full time, maybe re-sign a Luis Ariz. Brandon Lau's a free agent this year. There's a good amount of good second baseman gonna be available. You know, like a Jazz Chisholm, a Gleyber Torres, even you explore a trade of Ketel Marte. Uh, that's probably your most direct option without re-signing Alec Bohm because there's not any good third baseman available on out of free agency. You could explore the trade, but again, the best trade piece right now, off the top of my head, is probably Matt Chapman, which is he's
Mm-hmm.
Matt Chapman's a great player, but he's not necessarily an upgrade money wise. When you look at what the Phillies probably give Alec Bohm, I just hate how much the Phillies are reshuffling their defense to for a guy who again he has a -1 WAR this season, right? I just, I find it interesting. It was reported that the Phillies never even talked to Trey Turner about moving to the outfield, which I think would have made the most sense when you go get a guy like Luis Arias and move Stott to short and then Trey back to the outfield, even if it's for a short period of time. But you talk, like you said, you mentioned the thing about Pete Alonso. Bryce Harper has said it a lot that he's willing to go back to the outfield over these last couple of years, trying to get the Phillies to do something. You have a guy like Pete Alonso who would have mashed in Citizens Bank Park. You have a guy, there's been guys after guys after guys who you could have gotten at first base, who you could have gotten at different positions to. And Bryce Harper has said he's willing to move. Bryce has not today said he's willing to move. You had guys around the diamond, and then you did nothing with it. You didn't move any of them, but now you move it for a slap hitter who's gonna struggle at Citizens Bank Park compared to where he was in San Francisco. San Francisco has that big outfield. It's a big park. Citizens Bank Park is one of the smaller parks in baseball. Luis Arias isn't hitting home runs. He's hitting balls in the gap. Balls in the gap in San Francisco that might get down are probably getting caught in Philly, right? That's the big difference. So they did a lot of reshuffling for honestly at the end of the day for a player who probably isn't worth doing all the reshuffling. 'Cause at the end of the day, Luis Arias, at least this is my opinion. I want to hear yours after I'm done. I don't think Luis Arias is a player who takes the Phillies from what they are now to a World Series contender. I just don't think that's, in my opinion, I don't think he's that.
I would have to agree, and I mean, I would have to say there weren't many real players on the deadline today that in the state of this offense, this team that like you think, oh, maybe this guy does click. Maybe you could have added up a few and made given yourself more confidence. It kind of results back to the postseason. I mean, what I would say about postseason ball is postseason ball. Do what you can there. You still got to play the game on the field, not on the stat sheet. Obviously, you just shared the Phillies OPS numbers. Now, so yeah, Luis Ariz. I mean the player himself. All right, it'll be fun to see him just try to be a slap hitter, get on base more here. You do make a great point about the size of Citizens Bank Park. You wonder maybe Luis Ariz tries to adjust his game a bit. You don't know how dangerous that could be to his swing because you would hate to see him come here. Now, so it's pretty bad ROI uh, after trading for him. Now, I do think though when it comes to making the Phillies a playoff contender. One point that I do would like to get to about these past few weeks is leadership within this ball club. Uh, Something I've been a little critical. What I have been glad to see is Bryce Harper and Dave Dombrowski kind of repairing the relationship a bit. It's obviously there's some stuff been released recently to make it look better. I was really disappointed when I saw the Matt Gallup article released saying that, oh, it's been damaged since like a 10-month Cold War since those comments made after the postseason last year. I'm glad they tried to reconnect a bit because you're not going to have any success here if you have a disconnection between your PBO and Bryce Harper. But now I do question. I've questioned it for a while. Is Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper leadership of this team when you've seen how they resulted year after year. And now I have to look at Don Mattingly now too. Obviously, when he was first hired, you obviously remember the stat like he's had a long prolonged baseball career, probably make it into Cooperstown one day, and then but like last year the Blue Jays bench coach was his first ever World Series appearance, and I always wonder are we going to see a reason why that's the case? And I feel like we did see it in these past few weeks where you saw a lack of leadership from stuff that was being said, and even play on the field. Even though I would say eventually the Phillies got a little unlucky, but then during just that first homestand after the break, it did look really ugly. And I would say in playoff baseball, you can be a very capable team. You can get away with bad managerial decisions. There's a lot of managerial decisions that, like in the game, mechanical wise, that Don Mattingly has made that we can be very critical of. And maybe like, what was he thinking there? You can get away with that in playoff baseball. What you cannot get away with is bad leadership. And I'm really hoping that Don Mattingly can prove us that no, he has what it takes to rally the guys and bring them together for what could just be a postseason run that, as of right now, just has to rely on really just hopes and dreams. But sometimes it's all you need.
I think at this point, you look at Mattingly and you look at the Phillies' leadership. I think something might have clicked after Friday night in Baltimore. It feels like the energy is just a little bit different. They're getting the big hits. Just feels a little different. I mean, tonight's game, Derek Hill with that grand slam, then Harper with the two-run home run. I actually couldn't believe it's the Phillies' first grand slam of the season.
Yeah,
I can't. I'm shocked that it's taken this long, but I feel like something has definitely turned the corner for the Phillies. But before we get off here for this episode, I just want to ask your opinion about the Phillies playoff seeding. Right now, they're the fifth seed, fall down to the sixth seed with the Arizona win. I personally believe the Phillies' best path is to probably go through the sixth seed, getting Atlanta, Milwaukee, then playing the Dodgers. Do you think the Phillies should try to avoid the Dodger matchup until the CS, or just face it head on, Chicago Dodgers, before the NLCS?
I mean, my constant philosophy has always been control what you can control, and when you have your opponent, you got to go in there and play your best ball. I would say, yeah, you do bring up a good point. Yeah, I think if the Phillies had the chance, let's say they are the five seed, yeah, if you clinch a playoff berth in those last few weeks, yes, I would say maybe yeah, try to prefer grab that six seed, and yeah, maybe try to set yourself up a path where yeah. But I think overall, my concern right now, this isn't a year where like oh we're just coasting our way. Like as of right now, we're like thinking, all right, division, no looking back now. Like no, we're in a situation like just get the playoff berth down. And as of right now, that is my first concern because you're also a few games out, and you're with some of the team's flaws. You say, it looks like some things have clicked. And I would say the Phillies haven't been playing terrible ball the last few because he really just ran into a few last week or so. He really just ran into a few bad outings from your most reliable guys, and like the Joan Duran messed up. Your two best starting in that first game, in Miami. Your two best right-handed pitchers on the staff had their worst games of the year. I mean, like, where the hell does that come from? And then obviously then Aaron Nola start the next night. He had the worst, I would the BIP luck ever, and he could not buy a hit for anything. Obviously, you lost 1-0, whatever with that. Then the next day, you were just kind of bullpen depleted, and you were stuck with Seth Johnson out there. Maybe I could have wished they could have went with Jonathan Bull in there in that position, or somebody else who hadn't pitched the night before. A little better because the Seth Johnson that situation was rough. And obviously, the beginning of the Baltimore series, you're up 4-2. You're controlling the game, and then Ryan Kirkring's supposed to be your guy that can come. All right, he can come in there, shut down a seventh inning, which he's been able to do a lot this season. Just couldn't get the job done there. So yes, I think leadership wise, Nate has something clicked in this team. Yes, maybe they're back to playing not ugly offensive baseball, but you can still find the holes in the team, and you got to hope that they don't they can't spiral out again.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch these next 7 weeks about how this team goes. Can they get back into a division race with Atlanta? You know, how much will they have to battle out with a team like Arizona, who they play again, a team like St. Louis, who they haven't even played yet this season, a team like San Diego, who they have the season series over, a team like Miami, who they play again this season. Just be interested to see how everything plays out as we wind down this 2026 season into the 2026 postseason. But that'll wrap up this episode of the Phillies Fan Podcast. Thank you, Ian, for joining us. Uh,
Thanks
I'm
for having
Jay.
me.
I'm Jay Harper, and we'll see you in the next one.